All right, welcome everybody. This is Gavin. We're on with our friend Brett C. Banafe again, and we're going to talk today a little bit about. We're going to talk about OpCAT a little bit, which I've been doing videos about with Scrypt and going down and seeing some of the small blockers there at Stanford, and also ARC. He just did a big space today on the Discord channel regarding a new technology called ARC for devs. Also, the launch of the Champions TCG, which is the fifth set of the card game launching today. And then in addition, we can have some fun with the Akashic record stuff and how it applies to the BSV blockchain potentially. So we had a space on that. So Brett, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, welcome. I'm so glad to see you again. We had some fun on that space last week with you, and we had a really good panel with the Akashic record stuff, and it was super interesting going deep on some of the woo subjects. And so, but there are some couple pressing issues. It sounds like you got the TCGs launching, and then the stuff with ARC. And then I definitely want to get your perspective on OpCAT. So why don't you start with the TCG, Champions TCG?
Sure. Yeah. Champions TCG is a game. It is a digital trading card game. So it's a great example of what the blockchain is useful for in a practical sense, how it can disrupt an existing industry. If we think back to some moments in time when, established industries were disrupted by technology, it's easy to forget that back in the day, remember, movies were made without sound. And then it was someone's idea that, hey, maybe we should add sound to this movie. That's a novel idea. Now you would never think about a movie that doesn't have sound. Similarly, like Blockbuster, they made a whole living on renting VHSs to families for movie night. And then Netflix came along with updates in technology. You have new opportunities for businesses to emerge. And what we see with the emergence of Web3 and blockchain technology, especially as it relates to gaming, is we see it solves a main primary problem that gamers have. There's a real need for gamers to be able to trade. First of all, these games take lots of time and that you have to invest in order to achieve and unlock these rewards that the game offers you. But there's no way to convert those rewards into, assets for yourself, so they become basically sunken costs, and everyone accepts you just have this sunken cost of your time and effort and energy. And basically what you get out of it is the fun of playing. When we look at the industry, the gaming industry, when you take the movie industry and the music industry and combine them, you get like a third of the gaming industry or something like that. It's monumental. It's one of the largest industries on the planet. People just put tons and tons of time, money, effort, and energy into it. It's about achieving your best result. So people who are very personally driven and motivated by achieving their best, it gets them. There's a lot of creative thinking, a lot of problem solving. So it's great for kids to learn how to deal with failure and how to translate that failure into success. So there's lots of reasons why, gaming is just a market that is ripe for disruption. And what we see is blockchain technology coming along and allowing these assets that are being earned in the game, whether that's a promo card like Champions TCG is providing for users who purchase the first 1,000 packs of their newest set, Elemental Warfare, tonight at 8 p.m. on July 31st, or whether it's, achievements that you get for winning weekly tournament rewards, seasonal tournament rewards, promotional opportunities, etc., or even just unlocking them within the game when you get to new levels and things like this. These are now items and assets that can be, first of all, personally owned by the players. So it's not dependent on the game to maintain an account-based model for who owns what assets, so such that if ever the game went under, there's not going to be a record of where those assets are owned. Whereas by using a public blockchain, there's a distributed, fair, and accountable model for understanding who owns what digital assets. Of course, with BSV, you get the unique ability to have that asset actually on chain as opposed to just a pointer to, a file on IFPS or something like this. And and then, just when it comes to the assets themselves, they really are, trading cards are JPEGs. That's what they are at the end of the day. And, slinging and trading JPEGs. I mean, I have a 30-year history with this. I've been a Magic the Gathering player since 1994. I've played a little bit on the semi-professional side, and, have a lot of experience with tournament Magic, organizing tournament Magic. So what we're seeing is that, as Web3 is emerging and we're seeing profile pictures dominating the conversation in the space as people are trading these assets, what we see with BSV is not just the ability to trade these rare assets that, a rare ape or something like this, but to actually trade a JPEG that has a real functional utility, that has a health bar, that, can earn you certain rewards within the game. We think that it's the first domino to fall. Champions TCG has just gone through its biggest month ever. It's right at around 4,000 daily active games played, just about 5,000 monthly active users. And it's just, a perfect first domino to fall, to signal that there is a massive shift in the gaming market and opportunity, but it's going to depend on real utility.
So it sounds like you guys have 5,000 customers.
Well, that's just it per month. I think lifetime active customers that have played the game at least, once, I think it's closer to 50,000 users. So it's an extremely successful project in terms of its user adoption. And one of the things that's really valuable about this is that, gamers are coming to the platform not because it's a token or because it's a opportunity to earn crypto or something like this. They're coming just simply because it's a game, and the assets on the game themselves are tokens. But it's allowing this technology to reach a completely new market, because the users that are getting interested in it, they're not interested in it just because it's a blockchain game, but they're interested in it because it's a great trading card game. And it just so happens to be using the blockchain to solve these specific needs that trading card games have always had when it comes to their digital implementation. When it comes to the physical implementation, everyone has their, my cards are just in my backpack right over here. No, if Wizards of the Coast, the developer of that game, goes out of business, has nothing to do with my cards. All my cards, I own them all. I can still pass them down to my grandchildren. And sometimes with the collectors markets now, with Pokemon and some of these other collectors markets, these collections could theoretically be worth millions of dollars that I pass down to my children. Up until now, we haven't had the digital equivalent of that. And we see that the digital equivalent solves a lot of real problems, because oftentimes these physical cards are being counterfeited by extremely detailed fakes, and they're also being not just counterfeited, but they're being examined through the wrappers of the packs to see what rare cards are actually in there using X-ray technology. So what you're seeing is that what used to be the fun of me being a 14, 13-year-old kid opening a pack and wondering what I get, there's so much money involved in this industry now that they've reduced it down to just, using X-ray technology to figure out where is the money and where's the value. And so some of the fun and the joy of the game side of the assets are sort of lost in that process. But the introduction of blockchain technology, you have the ability to reintroduce the concept of collectors, which are massively important to the trading card game market, into the digital trading card game space, because now collectors can actually own these assets. They can trade them without any knowledge or will of the game itself. But then also you have the ability to have fair and provable auditability and accountability in terms of the total supply of the cards, in terms of the guaranteed rarities, the guaranteed ability to have an unaware pack where you're not sure exactly what card's in there when you open it. And those are some of the things that we think can reinvigorate a collector's market that has basically not existed on the digital side.
So it sounds like the game the cards are going to be on the blockchain. So as opposed to back in the day where you're bringing a physical card, they don't do that anymore. Now it's going to be like a digital card, kind of like an NFT, and it's
Exactly.
all on chain. So and the people they buy that card, do they have to pay with a credit card? How do they buy that card?
Yeah, so they can pay with a credit card. They can pay natively with BSV or one of the other tokens. It's also on Doge. It's on BTC as well as immutable IMX. They can pay with any of the native assets. But the real,
Do they? So
yeah,
is it built also on BTC, or does it somehow swap? How does
no,
that work?
yeah, it uses it's the cards are also on these other chains. And that's one of the strategies that the game has had, is to just be chain agnostic, where, different users who are, fond of or familiar with Doge or BTC, they can get access to the cards as well. And you can have a mixture. So when you build a deck to play against an opponent in a tournament, you could build a deck with, 35 cards. 10 of them could be from BSB, 10 of them could be from BTC, 5 of them from Dogecoin, and 10 from immutable. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they're all just, assets that you own, and the game can allow you to use all of them
So
together.
does the same card? I'm imagining that each player has its own unique card. So or like style of card. Does that card exist in the same kind on another chain, like on BTC or Doge, or is
Yeah,
it different over there? Like,
yeah, it can exist. Sometimes they're different. It just depends. So it depends on which packs you
okay,
open. Yeah, and some of them are really rare. So I think packs of Generation 2 on BTC are extremely rare. And so you could have the exact same card on BSV, but maybe you have just one that's in much more limited supply, even though they look almost exactly the same. And what's interesting is that we've seen this. We're not building this playbook. This is a playbook that we've seen since the 90s with Pokemon. You can have, shadowless Charizards versus first edition versus second edition, and they function all exactly the same in the game. The only difference is maybe a slight little shadow on the border or something like this that has almost no function at all to any player. But what we see is that, given the ability for humans to collect things, they'll always lean into that and have fun, setting all of their cards aside and looking at them and wanting to pursue the rarest versions. And, this is a game that sort of trading cards pioneered and developed. And what we see is that blockchain technology, especially BSV, is really fundamentally perfectly suited to provide all of these tools to do the exact same game that trading cards have been operating on since the 90s, but to do it on just a massively scalable network. Because the unique part about a blockchain game versus a physical trading card game is that, if I'm building the next Pokemon, I have to first of all promote and I have to market my product, and then I have to manufacture it, and I have to wrap it, and I have to ship it to the stores, and then the buyers have to come into the stores and buy them, etc. I mean, there's a lot of steps in that process that get between the entrepreneur, myself, who's trying to see if this is going to have legs or not, and the actual deployment of the product. Whereas with blockchain technology, especially with Handcash, who's been a partner of Champions TCG, it's one-click deployment. You want 1 million cards, or you want 1 million packs of your trading cards. There's a button for that. You click the button, and this isn't just something where you can buy it in Oklahoma, or you can buy it when you're going through, Denver, Colorado, where I'm from. You can buy it globally. You could be in Antarctica and purchasing these packs and competing with players in the Philippines on a global level with a tournament leaderboard that is global and universal. And you can pay rewards that pay out micro fractions of a penny. So you could, we think of like paying every, currently Champions pays once an hour. So, every hour divides, X amount of dollars among all players, and however many wins you got in that hour, you get a percentage of that. But realistically, you could pay down to the damage point. It can be fractionalized infinitely. or unboundedly. And that's one of the unique things that only BSV enables.
Are they being paid in BSV?
Yes, currently they're being paid in BSV, and right now or I believe there's also some payments that are coming out in USDC, which is tokenized on top of the IMX chain. But we're open to any payment solutions. So once money launches, which is one of the talked about stable coins for USD, tokenized USD on top of BSV. I mean, that would be a ideal solution, because one of the problems with crypto games is the additional barrier or hurdle that users have to jump through if they have never heard of blockchain before. It's great if users already know about it, but we're targeting a demographic, like I said, that's bigger than the movie and the music industry combined. And so one of the ways, the unique ways and novel ways that we're tackling that, is the ability to, when you go to a Walmart and you check out at the cashier, there's a gift card option to purchase something like Fortnite bucks, V-Bucks, Roblox, things like this that my children ask for when it's their birthday time. Well, we can do that same approach where we're putting digital gift cards with redeemable NFT trading card packs that can be redeemed for purchase, but those can be purchased at a physical store with a debit or credit card, just like any other virtual currency. And it really enables a new demographic of blockchain, of gamer, to actually be onboarded to the blockchain.
Sounds amazing, man. And are you still, so if people are interested, or I don't know if you guys are still looking for investors, but if you are, how would they find out about and reaching you and contacting you?
Yeah, so best point of contact for Champions is Miles at championstcg.com. And that is Miles Malik, our CEO. He runs the entire game. And yeah, still seeking investment. So mainly the funds would be used for that exact in-store physical store rollout that I was talking about, where these digital gift cards are being mass produced and then brought directly to these gaming stores in person, or mailed to them in some cases. We have a partnership with some of the largest retailers of these gaming stores on the planet. People who have sold their businesses to eBay, and so they have a really deep relationship with some of the largest stores in the world. And we think that this is the best approach, because it gives users a really easy entry point to get access to the game. And then the other side of this coin, Gavin, is that when you're walking into a game shop and you're explaining the concept to them, it's one thing to tell them like, hey, it uses blockchain, it's really cool, it's this new technology, it's going to replace everything, but at the end of the day, if you can tell them, hey, you're going to make a lot of money, that's going to open a lot of doors and a lot of ears to you. Well, the Champions TCG, by virtue of the fact that it is a digital trading card game that can instantly deploy, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of cards globally for basically pennies with the BSV public blockchain network, you have the ability to now provide revenue sharing opportunities with these physical locations where the assets are being purchased, and that you can even do things like unique assets that are purchased. Like, for example, we're using Transmira right now, and this, I think, is the first time that this has ever been announced, but we're using Transmira's app Omniscape, and now Omniscape allows you to drop geolocated digital objects into GPS coordinate locations. So we went online, found the GPS coordinates for every GameStop location in the United States. It's over 3,500 GameStop locations. And we dropped 12 of the Champions TCG starter packs inside every GameStop in America. And to this day, if you go out with the Omniscape app and you walk into a GameStop, you will find Champions products there on the floor, able to be picked up for completely free as a starter pack. So it doesn't have all of the rarest cards. It just has some of the basic ones that you need to get started playing the game. But we can really drive traffic to these physical locations who partner with us and show them that, yes, blockchain is a new technology, but it's not here to replace the local physical mom and pop shops that gamers love. We're here to give them another revenue source. And we think that when they can see that they can actually make a lot of money by partnering with Champions TCG, that this will be a really great way to educate and onboard the next generation, just like Pokemon did when we were young.
Nice. All right, Brett, that's great, man. Well, thanks for all the insights. Sounds like it's going to launch today on the next the fifth set of cards. People can check that out. You gave all the information there. So let's go over to. I want to get your. Well, actually, I'm interested in hearing about this ARC thing as well, and what that is. What exactly is ARC?
Yeah, so we just finished up that subject of gaming on chain because I do believe it's the biggest use case that's out there right now. It's not because it will always be the biggest use case, but it's the most easily accessible and the first domino to fall. So this need for ARC as a tool for developers, this really came out of gaming, because crypto fights. If you remember, maybe
Years ago.
so they were really pushing the envelope in terms of getting 20, 30, 50 million transactions on chain within an hour. Now that number within a day, and that number has since been eclipsed. We have 100 million block transactions across some 24-hour periods, and we're scaling up and getting ready for Terranode, which will take that number and make it look like just a drop in the bucket. But what we saw with this 100 million transactions being pushed across the network in a 24-hour period was that, when you're firing that amount of data to a public chain, there's oftentimes going to be some areas where there's gaps in the information flow. And, the work that Crypto Fights did to get those and expose what those transaction gaps were, they became instrumental in terms of building ARC. So what ARC is and ARC was developed by the BSV Association, and ARC is a tool that developers can use to broadcast a transaction. But ARC as a service is what you might call a proto overlay service. So an overlay service would be like, in the old stories of the sci-fi days when you'd wear your glasses and maybe you could see, some data, because you have the cross between the computer and the real world. You're seeing overlaid data that's maybe coming through these glasses lens, but you're also able to see through the lenses and see the world. You're seeing the data overlaid on top of the world. Well, ARC serves as this intermediate point between the world we could describe as basically being the chain, whether or not something is on chain, etc. That is the world that we're looking at. But ARC is this proto overlay service where it's giving us information about the transaction that we broadcast before it actually reaches the chain. So, this is important for developers because sometimes they need to retry things. Sometimes they need to follow a Merkle or get a Merkle path for something, and these are all aspects of Bitcoin that make it uniquely scalable. First of all, it's the UTXO model. It's the ability to scale peer-to-peer and to horizontally scale through microservices. So ARC is really a stepping stone to get up to the chain and allow you to make a broadcast of a transaction. And if you ever need to follow up on the status of that transaction, you can look for the callbacks from ARC. So we held a session today with members of Handcash, which is an excellent web wallet. If you haven't gotten a chance to try that, highly encourage users to check out Handcash. It's not only great as a web wallet for your funds, for micropayments, but it's also great for gaming items. It's the tool that Champions TCG is using. And we also had Tal, which is the primary node on the network that is building blocks, along with Gorilla Pool was also present on the call. Gorilla Pool is a little bit unique because what we learned on the call today was that Tall, as the largest node on the network with the most hash power, building blocks and really setting in for the long haul for the development tools on BSV, we see that that they're getting this feedback from application layer services like Handcash on exactly how these callbacks should be coming and what statuses should be submitted, et cetera. That's giving developers the tools that they need to have reliability and assurance when they're putting data on chain that is actually getting confirmed, that is getting mined, put into a block, et cetera. And so that feedback is extremely important. But the unique part about Gorilla Pool is that Gorilla Pool is both a node. They're another node on the network that's building blocks very similar to Tall, so they have one foot in that miner world where they're trying to all the time be the ones that's confirming the transactions. But on the other hand, they also have a foot in the application world and the data overlay services world, because they're building tooling like Jungle Bus that is allowing for developers to do things like, in the same way that we use AI nowadays to say, scan an entire document and say, show me every sentence, pull up every sentence that has, a capital letter in it, something like this. And it can do that for us. We're Gorilla Pool and Jungle Bus is allowing that process, but for the entire blockchain. So show me every transaction that has an origin address that begins with the number 1 and then the letter A. Who knows what the asks are. They're limitless because human potential and creativity is limitless. But what we see with the public blockchain network is that it forces our creativity to come together so that we can be creative together and build a shared future together. And ARC is just the tool that is allowing the various different layers to speak a common language with each other.
Hang on 1 second, Brett.
Yeah.
Let me just pause that just for one moment. Hold on, pause 1 second. Okay, so Brett, now I'm confused by the ARC. So please explain it like I'm 5 years old. What the heck this ARC is?
Sure. Yeah, let's say that we decided we wanted to play a game together, and the game that we want to play is bowling. So we have our pins at the end, like when you were a kid, you maybe bowled on the driveway or something like that, but eventually when people start to compete, you want to bowl on a level surface that allows us to compete together. Arc is sort of like, when the lane that you're bowling down, right? The transaction is kind of like, you want your transaction to get to the pins. That's the whole point of bowling, but it's obviously a lot easier with bumpers, right? Because sometimes your arm goes a little astray.
The ball goes in the gutter.
Exactly. And ARC is basically the bumper lanes that allow the transaction. Once you bowl, you release it, it goes directly down the center. It goes right to the chain. And if you need any information, you can get that from ARC. So if you can say, hey, has it hit any pins yet? ARC
so it's a kid's bowling and he just put the bumpers on there and he's guaranteed to hit the pins, basically.
Exactly. That's what we need. Because with developers, especially with blockchain, me and you, we get into blockchain and we understand it at a fundamental deep layer and we get excited by it. But a lot of times these developers, they don't understand it. They don't necessarily care. They just want something that works. So ARC is the way to sort of narrow their focus, say, hey, release the ball and you don't have to worry about it. Once you release it, ARC will make sure that it gets to where it's going.
Nice. All right, that helps, Brett. So now let's go on over to OpCAT. We're about 30 minutes in, and so we, if you've probably been following I don't know if people have been following my Twitter, my videos lately. I'm good friends with the Scrypt and Xiaowei Lu, and we did a hackathon, and you came to it and supported it, and we're going to do more. And so now Scrypt is being called to expand. Like you guys in your company, you're working agnostic on all these blockchains. So now the same things with Scrypt and some of the small blockers, they want to enable potentially OpCAT. And so the OpCAT, apparently what it is the way I understand it is it's part of the script. And so it's going to allow smart contracts on Bitcoin on the BTC version of Bitcoin, like Ethereum has potentially. That's apparently that's the smallest source. So like all the cool smart contract stuff that Ethereum is doing could potentially be on BTC with this OpCAT enabling. That's the way I understand it. But it's yeah. So what do you know about it, and how do you see it playing out? With this whole thing, with it being on a different, on the small block side of Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, how I see this is that, if we imagine that we're all getting on a boat and we have a pilot or a captain of the boat, and we're all doing this whale watching tour or something like that, right? And we get all the way out into the Pacific Ocean, and all of a sudden our boat captain, has a heart attack, falls over in the water, and now all of a sudden we're stuck, right? This is sort of like the world that we find ourselves in with blockchain development. In some ways we're kind of on an island of our own, and to me, I think that we're all on this same planet together. We're all on the same boat together. And any advancements, we saw this with ordinals, we saw, huge, massive advancements in terms of putting data on chain that came out of these small block communities. And it ended up being really valuable for all of the community members for the emergence of Web3, because it's just creating another bridge and another road for mainstream normie users to realize that there is value in being able to build smart contracts. There is value in an immutable truth ledger, etc. And if there's one person on the boat that really is good at sailing, and another person in the boat that's maybe good at steering the rudder or something like this, we don't want to fight. This is a larger call to us as human beings, because we don't want to fight with each other about these little differences about how I approach technology versus a different approach to technology. Because at the end of the day, we're really in this Goldilocks zone right now in terms of the emergence of this opportunity for humanity to step into its role as the decider and the definer of its own fate. And that's going to have trickle down, ripple down effects that are going to be, our grandchildren's grandchildren are going to be dealing with. And, to me, I think, we really need to embrace all ideas, all communities, and really see each other as blockchain brothers, not as, separatists that are only wanting to see, the success of one group at the expense of another. And I think that's one of the opportunities that we have in this moment in time with the emergence of blockchain. It's an immutable truth ledger. We've never had the ability for humanity to thrive with an immutable truth ledger. We've always had to trust some entity that's in the middle, and we've seen that middle layer becomes the attack vector. That's where, if you can wedge yourself into that middle layer, the trusted layer, then suddenly you become the easiest person to disseminate falsehoods and misguidance and lies, because you're the trusted network, so no one second guesses you. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to this opportunity in history. Now, I believe that BSV has it down from the get-go. We're built around the white paper, the original Bitcoin protocol, and it's not like Satoshi was just some guy that like dropped a bowl of beans on the ground and they formed into the white paper, and he said, let's take a picture of that, right? He did a lot of thinking about this stuff, and it turns out that he was right, because as we continue to push the scaling limits, we see that while there's some unique things that Ethereum has enabled with its general purpose language, and with its ability to store state and things like this, we've also seen that it develops some problems down the road. And really, you only see those problems materialize when you get into a situation when you start to face extreme scalability. And so with BSV, you know, we have the luxury of allowing others around us to compete, and we can learn from them, and we should learn from them. We shouldn't be high on our horse. You know, we should use this opportunity to try to galvanize all of humanity into building a better world.
Yeah, you know, it's such a abundance mindset. You know, I was down in Sacramento. I had a big dinner with friends on Friday night, and we're at Morton's, and you know, a brand new steakhouse just opened up downtown. It was like a Brazilian steakhouse, and we're sitting around here, you know, and like the you know, we're hanging with friends, and they're talking about how great the steakhouse was next door, and the conversation comes up with like, well, could it be bad for Morton's and with the waiter here? And I'm thinking, well, why not look at it like abundance? Like, look, we went to the Brazilian steakhouse last night. Now we're here at Morton's on Saturday night. It's actually good for business because we're going to eat steak both nights, no matter what, whether it's here or there, and we want to go somewhere else. So it's like, it actually is good for business because it draws us in to this area because you got two steakhouses to choose from. You know, so it brought us in together because of that. And it's a good example of like blockchain now, right? You go, oh, okay, you've got this small block and you've got the big block. And so, well, I like small block, but I also like big block, let's say a person, right? And the big block does all these other things. And small block is good for this. And as opposed to just hating on it, hate, you know, no reason to hate. Like I said, it got this abundance mindset. You know, it's totally abundant because all the no coiners, Brett, all these no coiners, they need a place to go. Right? I mean, and that's most everybody out there. So, you know, yeah, it seems like it's that mindset of abundance as opposed to scarcity with this blockchain adoption. So, you know, I mean, what is it? You know, what do you think about OpCAT? I mean, it sounds like, and what would it take? What would it take to be enabled on Bitcoin Core?
You know, I'm not 100% of an expert on, you know, the BIP 347, but you know, as I understand it, there is some key things that Ethereum enables when they, in terms of how their blockchain was structured. And, you know, of course, we all know that Ethereum uses an account-based model. And so, you know, so as I understand it, it's something to the effect of, you know, the addressing contract for the smart contract. And, you know, of course, Xiaowei Liu has been my, you know, guideposts when it comes to everything smart contract related. Because again, one thing you have to understand is that, you know, Bitcoin has always supported smart contracts, but just because the contracts are supported, you know, when they're, you know, also, you know what else supports smart contracts? Binary code, right? because like, you know, if you write enough binary, or if you write enough assembly or whatever, you know, you can do all types of limitless things. So what you can do isn't necessarily the problem. One of the issues really becomes, you know, the accessibility to that. And so we saw with Bitcoin script, you know, that all of these things were possible, you know, with smart contracts and things like that. You know, those are also possible in Ethereum. Now, Ethereum makes some major concessions to enable them, but for the cost of those concessions, they also get some advantages. And some of those advantages we saw are like, you know, for example, Solidity as a language is very familiar to developers who are typically used to building on something like JavaScript or something like that. So Scrypt, Xiaowei Liu specifically, who's behind BIP 347, the push for OpCAT in BTC, you know, he was someone that he didn't just look at this and see, oh, there's a problem, you know, like, well, I guess, you know, I guess that's all I'm going to do about it. You know, like he said, okay, well, there's a problem that that this functionality and the tooling is possible using Bitcoin's native scripting language, but it's also very obtuse. It's very obscure. And unless you have the motivation and time to really devote to get into and figure out exactly how to do that, you know, it's going to result in maybe 1 year, 2 years, maybe even 5 years of delay in terms of the adoption that we could be at, because it's just too difficult for developers, and they have to unlearn the things that they've already learned, right? And this is part of the problem with the UTXO model, because this is it's a really kind of completely novel concept in terms of how to keep an account of something. So we saw that Zhao Wei didn't just sit on the sidelines and say, okay, well, like, this is just a problem, I guess we got to live with it. He went about and he built script, which is a complete domain specific language of TypeScript. So if you are familiar with TypeScript, you already are familiar with how to code smart contracts on Bitcoin. You just have to learn the specific functions that script enables. And you can do it with sometimes like 3 or 4 or 5 lines of code. I mean, it's like very simple to do this. So I would say, the efforts that Zhao Wei is putting into, BIP 347 and advancing the smart contract functionality of small blocker chains, I don't want to say that it's like a Trojan horse or something like this, but basically all of a sudden, if these BTC, one thing that it has, it's lacking in a lot of areas, but one thing that it has is a mass adoption and a lot of liquidity. But all of these people, the liquidity and the mass adoption, what did they say? They wear the laser eyes and they say,
never sell your Bitcoin, they say. Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah, and they say it's a savings mechanism, right? It's not meant to for payments. It's not electronic cash, despite what the white paper said. That guy Satoshi, he didn't know what he was doing. Like, I understand Bitcoin better than Satoshi. And I just learned about it a couple weeks ago. But it's a savings mechanism. It's digital gold. And what Zhao Wei is showing them is saying, hey, with this one button, it's like, imagine that your house and had electricity. You had like really nice light bulbs inside, like it was all wired for electric. All you have to do is flip the switch, and Zhao Wei is showing them, like, the small blockers, they're like sitting in the dark and they're like, well, it's savings technology, and if you really
We're saving money here,
you
saving money
in the dark. That's how Satoshi wanted it. And he's just saying, no, look, like, it's already on. All you have to do is go over to that wall and flip the switch, and you will have smart contracts in your precious little Bitcoin BTC small block world. And so, again, it's like, this is about momentum, right? Because we're not going to build Rome in a day. And guess what? Sometimes we're going to get some things wrong. I think that BSV is the most capable, but we can learn something from other chains, and Zhao Wei is a little bit kind of putting a Trojan horse into the BTC world, because he's showing them that they can have something that Ethereum has, and it's not going to cost them their digital gold, right? All they have to do is enable one little opcode, and when you sort of get through about that, you can start to break down some of the other silly objectives or silly objections to things like larger blocks, etc.
Yeah, larger blocks replaced by fee and others. So, all right. So, Brett, what is the state of the union regarding Terranode and Metanet? I mean, I've heard a lot about it. I'm really wondering, what is Metanet, and what's the state of the union of Terranode first? Because I heard a lot about it, but how do you see Terranode going? What's the overall pitch on what's happening? Terranode being the big expansion to this massive new freeway, right? That's the idea. So a freeway with massive amount of lanes for traffic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Terranode is the proof of Satoshi's original vision. And so BSV does stand for Bitcoin Satoshi's vision. And Satoshi's vision has always been that Bitcoin scales. If you look back at the old information of Satoshi online, you can see him, constantly reinforcing that Bitcoin can scale to larger than Visa with existing technology, and when Satoshi released Bitcoin, the first response that he had was from a guy named James Donald, who explained to him all of the reasons why Bitcoin wouldn't work and wouldn't scale. And to this day, you know, a lot of the small block, you know, traction and their strategy and the digital gold and anonymization and all of these things that that replaced by fee, all of these things that make it so that BTC has deviated away from Satoshi's original vision. You know, these have all been living into the first naysayers. These are like the grand naysayers of Bitcoin. And you know, even I think Greg Maxwell famously said that he had already concluded that Bitcoin was impossible, so therefore it must be impossible. And you know, when I was growing up, do you remember a guy named Glenn Plake?
Glenn Plake, no. Who's
Glenn
that?
Plake. I was into you know, skiing, extreme skiing, and stuff like this, and he was the you know, poster that you would have on your wall if you were a kid and you loved skiing. You know, he had like the giant mohawk, you know, this giant blonde spike, diamond spike mohawk, you know. And you know, he one time had a quote that said, you know, those that say that it cannot be done are usually interrupted by others doing it. And so what we see is that the grand naysayers of Bitcoin have said, don't, no, we've already concluded it can't work. That's why we're going to neuter the network and, you know, and limit it, you know, limit the blocks, and, you know, we don't want to tax. You know, if you really get down to it too, that one of their main arguments comes down to what they consider to be spam. So they say, well, you know, we don't want spam on the network, you know, like, for example, we had a lot of fun earlier in this call talking about Champions TCG. Those are digital trading card games, and that game has sold 2 million cards, right? Those are considered spam to some people, you
Damn.
know, because, you know, just like my grandmother or my grandfather might consider my existing Magic cards, the ones that I have in my backpack over there, they might consider them trash, you know, like, how they don't know how the game works. They don't know that they're, you know, like really, you know, 30-year-old Magic cards, and that there's a game and there's fun, and they just look at them and go, chuck them away. And that's why things like, you know, comic books became so valuable. Superman 1, you know, Spider-Man 1, you know, these became valuable not because necessarily there was a wild collector market at the time. It was because there wasn't a wild collector market at the time, and everyone threw them away. Why would this be worth anything? You know, so we see that that the naysayers want to say what is and isn't allowed on chain. And what Terranode is the free ramp to get onto the public blockchain network. And once it's on there, well, first of all, like just like ARC, the bumper lanes, you know, you have first we have our ARC lanes, which get the information onto the chain. But then once we have the information on the chain, we have tools like what Gorilla Pool was promoting, Jungle Bus, which can feed you data and say, okay, show me all of the transactions that have something to do with, you know, a hippopotamus or something like this, right? You know, these are it's using the public blockchain in a way that is completely novel, that is very similar to like what Google did, that where it crawled all of the world's information networks and built and compiled its own compendium of that information, and that was the, you know, what you crawled when you did a Google search, right? Except instead of all that information being stored all on Google servers, right, that information can be parted out. So maybe some of that information can be stored by this service because they specialize in, like, just like BIP 347, right, smart contracting data and smart contracting platforms. Well, there might be a whole service that specializes in smart contracting data information. There might be another specialist that smart contracts in weather information, right? So what you're able to do is, instead of homogenize everything, so it forces these global monopolies, these monolithic technocratic entities into existence because they have to exist in order to house that much data. Instead, you can break things apart. It'd be like the equivalent of, like, imagine we have this beautiful solar system and life on Earth, and we want to, you know, and it involves the sun, but the moon is really vital too, and the Mars is vital, and Neptune and Venus. And you know what we should do? Let's lump them all together. So we have the sun at the top of the planet, then we have the layer of Mercury, then we have the layer of Venus, then we have Earth, right? No, it doesn't work when it's all put together in one single lump. You have to break them apart. And it's only when they're broken apart, as one of my favorite authors, Khalil Gibran, said when he was talking about marriage, he said, you know, the oak tree and the maple tree, they grow not in each other's shadow. There needs to be space between the trees. And it's not a disservice to the maple that the oak is growing higher, right? It's not a disservice to Gorilla Pool that tall is providing more hash. You know, it's a balancing point, and it's only when we can balance around these economic incentives and we can fractionalize the work and we can part it out and specialize it out, just like Adam Smith said with the baker and the, you know, the specialization of labor, et cetera, you know, that's when we can actually have a healthy system, because we keep each other in check.
So, and that's, you know, what exactly is the Metanet?
Yeah, and so the Metanet is a set. Okay, so once we have everything set apart, right? So we have the sun in the center, and then we have, you know, Mercury and Venus, and then Earth with its moon, et cetera. Right? We have everything separated so that they can coexist without being on each other's toes, right? But once we have them all separated, we need ways for information to flow back and forth, and for protocols for things to move around. And so the Metanet is really a set of protocols by which, okay, we have a smart contracting specialist with Xiaowei Liu, with Script and BIP 347, and then we have our weather and our data providers, and we have, you know, Jungle Bus, and we have all these different service layers. And then we have on the, you know, the outer layer, we have the actual peers. This would be like, you know, I go to the newspaper stand and I pay for a cup of coffee and a newspaper, you know, and I use my SPV wallet and I make a payment right there in real time. You know, that's the outer edges of the network. You know, how do these all communicate with each other? And so Metanet is really, it's a sort of, it's a, you know, we sometimes use the term Web3 or something like this, right? Which Web3 is sort of like an umbrella term, whereas Metanet is more of like a very specific way to have these systems and structures interacting with each other. And what's unique about it is that it really takes into account the fact that if we're really going to move away from these services like a Google, like these monolithic entities, these technocratic authorities, and we're going to build this more federated system where it's distributed and it's not all of the load is being borne by one single entity in the group. Now we have to have basically codified, you know, sets of operatives in terms of how information flows. And, you know, I use the example of a top, you know, when you were a little child and you had your little spinning top that you liked playing with or something like this, you know, and, you know, it's to balance a top on its fulcrum point is actually quite difficult, right? It's not impossible, you know, to balance it perfectly, but you need like an extremely level surface, right? Because any little wobble will cascade all the way up. This is why, you know, it's really important when you're building buildings to build them with this idea that the higher you get up the building, the more that the little structural imperfections at the base of the unit are going to wobble much more with greater frequency at the top of the building. So it's actually the top works when it's in motion. It doesn't work when it's still. So the Metanet protocol is a system by which all of these different operative information and all of the various different interdependent service layers can move in such a way as they're spinning around a common center point, which the center point is the node network, right? That is what we call on chain. And then it's only by them, and just in the same way it works with the solar system, right? We spin around the fulcrum point, which is that solar, the sun, and similarly, you know, within the topography of the blockchain network and within the Metanet, you know, this is the introduction of the protocols that will allow the network to reach its equilibrium. But it actually becomes easier to reach that equilibrium as the network scales. This is what Satoshi said when he said it actually becomes cheaper to use the network the more that it scales, because you can actually have a greater incentive to offset the load and to push the load farther out to specialist layers.
All right, so we talked a lot today, Brett. We covered the Champions TCG launch, which is going to be 8 o'clock Eastern for the 5 set cards or 5 set cards. Everybody could check that out. We covered the ARC, the new technology, which you had on Discord today. Also, we covered OpCAT, which is going to be the expansion of the enablement of opcodes on the BTC version of Bitcoin. We went into detail about Metanet and even talked a little bit about Terranode. So, before we wrap up here, I mean, what other last words of wisdom you could share with us, or that you want to shed light on, or anything you want to plug at the end?
Yeah, well, I want to thank you very much for everything that you do, Gavin. They say that, we talked a little bit about, whether or not it's better to give a fish to a man or to teach a man to fish. And you do so much in this community for teaching men to fish. I've really enjoyed our time together, not just in person the past 2 years at London Blockchain Conference, but the time that we spend in our mastermind sessions, where we're really encouraging people to live more fully into themselves and to discover their true human potential. Because the reality, they say 6% of our brains are all that even the smartest of us ever use, that we really have the capability to do amazing, powerful things. And oftentimes it's our own inability to believe that keeps us from achieving it. So I think that you do such a great job in terms of, giving people the tools that they need to live up to and into that truer, deeper version of themselves. You've been hosting some excellent spaces. So for those that are just learning about these sessions, make sure you follow Gavin on X, and we do some regular spaces, including the most recent we did was on the Akashic Records. I'd love to come back and get more in depth about that stuff, because and maybe have Todd, one of our content specialists at the BSV Association, because he's someone that truly inspires me when it comes to education and this type of content. And really what it is, about is really that federated system that we were talking about, where it's distributing out the load of the network and allowing people to play a more role that is true to who they are. And I think that when we can build what we're looking at with this emergence of blockchain technology, not just talking about from a technical level, because we spend a lot of time talking about that, but I'm talking about from a cultural level and from a cultural consciousness standpoint, in terms of how we treat each other, in terms of the rise and emergence of global freedom across the entire world. And what we're up against when we're looking at, the obstacles to that freedom. Sometimes the obstacles to our own freedom are our own assumptions, right? Because if we assume something and then we're wrong about it, then we're taking that assumption as God-given, when in actuality, this is just a misunderstanding that we have. So I think, we're in an opportunity on this planet, and you are one of the key, enablers of this transformation, I think. But it's a transformation into a more authentic, deeper, truer version of ourselves, both as individuals, but also collectively. And so, yeah, I want to thank you very much for all that you do for that, and encourage you to, keep advancing in that respect.
Thank you. Yeah. It's really, that's part of my role, is giving people a platform and, kind of bringing people together, in the space that we had the other day, which was, it's one of those things where people who haven't seen it, I'll post a link to the video at the end here. You can watch it. And ultimately, it's this super high level conversation of people that could easily get into debate on religion. I mean, it's one of those controversial subjects that's almost taboo, that it's like, oh, we really shouldn't talk about this, because it's kind of people debated it could get ugly, so, but it was harmonious. We had everyone that got along perfectly on the subject, and it was like everybody had their own time to speak, and then answer, and then respond, and there wasn't any shouting or or arguments at all, which is great, because people have disagreements on opinions, but it was all in harmony and respect and love. And that's, I think, what we could do more of, is another space like that, where we could kind of like keep it balanced and, and keep the uplifting vibe, because I'm all about the vibe being high when we have stuff like that. When I'm in something like that, if I'm going to be involved, I want the vibe high. The moment the vibe isn't high, I usually kind of dip out, go do something else. So, I mean, I'm all about keeping that vibe high and keeping that momentum going, So we really, we did a good job at that. I think we could do it again. I'll schedule another one in the near future. We'll bring Todd on and bring you back in. We just kind of like really go deep. One of the guys, BSV Panama, he really is a very wise man. So that guy impresses me by his knowledge more and more. He surprises me, put it that way.
Yeah, so many people surprise me. They blow me away. They're geniuses, and we're all geniuses. That's the thing, Gavin. We're all geniuses. My mom used to make me feel like a genius when I was a kid. And so God love her, God bless her. I wish everyone had a mother that made their kid feel as special as my mom
Definitely.
made.
But I got to thank my mom as well. She did the same for me, man. So I'm always grateful for that. She made me, feel the same way. I feel like a genius every day. Sit in the corner, wear that stupid hat on your head. There you go. You're so smart.
Exactly.
She called me smart ass.
Exactly. Yeah. And she used to say, if you judge a fish by its ability to ride a bicycle, then it'll grow up believing that it's stupid, and that's the thing, is that, some of us are fish, some of us are monkeys, some of us can climb trees, some of us can stomp the grass with our elephant feet, and we don't all need to judge or weigh each other against each other's capabilities and abilities, because the moment you do that, you see someone that you might write off as not very valuable or important, and they could be the most valuable and the most important in the pressing need. So I think it's important for us to recognize that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of the people like BSV Panama, the gentleman Cam, just really impressive by Cam's story. And then also, of course, Matt, B Love BU, Alex Favell, Crypto Spartacus. These people were, Casey Nicole. Of course, Mila, Mila's just so intelligent, dude, and such a great story and an inspiration. So, these people like, and there's more and more people that come and go that are just, I learn from, I learn a lot from, and I love to hear their perspective. So, well, thank you, Brett. It's been a pleasure, everyone. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, leave a comment, share the video out there. Watch the video at the end here I'll put up, which is going to be the space that we did about the Bitcoin on the Akashic records. You can check that out. And thank you, Brett. Let's do it again sometime.
All right. Thank you, Gavin.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll see you at the top.